All right. Node.js. What do you understand by Node.js? Have you heard about it or anything? चलो अभी के लिए before Node.js, tell me about JavaScript. Where can you execute JavaScript? Or where was the only thing? मतलब in your developer journey, I'm pretty sure you must have heard that you use JavaScript for front end, right? Like initial days. Would you agree with that? That initially we used to just use JavaScript for front end. Where was JavaScript executed? Let me just quickly show you. It was executed on the browser. Open the console on my browser. Let's say in the console, I type I don't know, console dot log, anything, does not matter. Node.js. I can see that the JavaScript code is working. Would you agree with this? Would you agree with this that I am able to execute JavaScript on my browser? Why is this the case? Why am I able to write or perform coding operations on my browser? Any thoughts on that? That is correct. So in general, browsers, or rather each browser has something known as a JavaScript engine, which helps you execute JavaScript code on the browser. For each browser, you have a different engine. Let's say I have Chrome. For Chrome, this JavaScript engine is known as V8. For Firefox, it is something else. So each browser has a JavaScript engine. Now, since the browser has this engine, can I say that on my machine I don't have this engine? The name of the engine for Firefox is SpiderMonkey. But anyway, does not matter what the name is. The real thing is browser has this engine, so it is able to execute JavaScript code. Does my machine have this engine? Like by default, if you buy a new machine, does your machine have that engine? No. That's a very logical conclusion, right? Because I have never installed something like this. If my machine, or rather my system, does not have that sort of an engine, is it right to say that I cannot execute JavaScript code on my system? That मेरी machine में engine नहीं है, मैं नहीं चला सकता. Let me prove it to you. Let me do the same thing. Let me open the terminal. CMD जैसे वहां पर लिखा था वहां से वैसे ही let me try to write it here as well. So console dot log node.js. And obviously, since my machine does not have engine, the JavaScript engine, this piece of code won't work on my machine. Does that seem logical to you? So in order for JS to run on my machine, can I say that my machine needs that engine? Is that right to say? What a JavaScript developer did was he took out the V8 engine. By the way, open source. This is open source. Even you can take out this code from GitHub or something like that. It is open source. And he used C++ and he created Node.js. What this actually is the V8 engine along with C++. And this is something that you can put on your machine. So if you have Node.js on your machine, technically it is right to say that your machine also has the engine now. And if you have the engine, you should ideally be able to execute JavaScript code. Let me prove it to you. So I have installed Node.js already. I don't want to waste time on installations, at least in the lecture. I can tell you how to install it. But for now, just assume that I have Node.js on my system. It's a simple installation. I can prove it to you that I have Node.js. So let me just show node ---- version. And I have this version of Node.js installed on my machine. If this is the case, then I should be able to execute JavaScript code. For that, I need to open the Node interactive terminal, just write Node. And now, since Node is running, I should be able to write JavaScript here. Let me try to write the same command again. Console.log node. Okay, sorry about that. Node.js. And just like we had in the browser, I'm able to execute JavaScript code here as well. That's the only takeaway here that I want you to have. Okay? So what is Node.js? I think now it should give you some perspective that earlier browser had engine. That's why you were able to execute JS on the browser and not on your machine. Now someone took the engine, wrote some C++ code, not important what he wrote, and now we have something that we can have on our machine. And because of this, magically, JS works on my machine as well. Now what? Since I have JS on my machine and I can write code on my machine, okay, before that, since Node.js is allowing me to write JavaScript code, technically, it is a runtime for JavaScript. Let me just open my browser and open the official documentation of Node.js. Node.js is an open source. Obviously, it is open source because it was built using something which was open source, and whoever created this has also kept this whole thing open source as well. Open source, cross-platform, any platform, JavaScript runtime environment. It gives you the environment or the runtime environment to run JavaScript on your machine rather than on the browser. ठीक है, it's not a library. I wouldn't call it a framework as well. It's a runtime environment. To download this, you can just open this page only and go for the LTS, which is the latest stable version. Download this, and the download is simple. Just like you have downloaded anything in your life, it would be exactly the same. Okay. Abhi, what did I do right now? Just think about this. Right now, I wrote JS code directly. What if I had JS files? It could be, what I'm doing right now is I'm directly writing the commands, but I wouldn't have the commands always. I'll have files, JavaScript files, and I want to execute those JavaScript files. I'll do all my work in this place. Okay? Let me create a JS file here. So new text document, anything. अभी के लिए चलो index नाम index.js. So I've created a file. Let me write some simple commands in it. Let me edit this. I can write anything that I want. Console.log. Maybe I can write my own name for now. Mana. Okay. So can I say that I have a JavaScript file in which there is some command? I don't care which command. All I know is there is a JavaScript file. Let's say if I have 100 commands, I won't be writing 100 commands one by one in the terminal. What I would like to do is I'll keep those 100 commands in a file, and I would want to run that file using Node.js. Because ideally, if Node.js is saying that I'm allowing you to write JavaScript, you should be able to run this index.js file. So is जगह पे let me just open my terminal. So my terminal is open at this position, Masterclass, which is the right position. Let me try to execute this file. So let me write node and just the name of the file, index.js. And I can see that whatever commands were written in the JavaScript file, they were executed. What did I have in the file? I had print manak, the string. So it was executed, and I can see the result here. So whatever claim Node.js made that, okay, I'm a runtime environment for JavaScript, that is true. And I just proved it. I was able to run commands directly using Node.js. I was able to write JavaScript in a file, and I was able to run that file using Node. Instead of writing this, let me just write hello world, because that's the thing that we do with all programming languages apparently. So ideally, the purpose of this file is to print hello world. Let's see if that purpose is fulfilled or not. Let me open command prompt. Let me just write node index.js. And it seems we were able to print hello world. Would you agree with that? Can we do this in VS Code or Node? You can do it anywhere you want. Again, I've opened VS Code for anyone who is not aware about this. This is just a text editor. Let's try to do the same thing here. Let me try to create a file, index.js, console.log, anything, test one. Let me repeat these lines a couple of times. So I have a index.js file, a JavaScript file, which has 4 commands testing all of these things. In order to run Node.js, let me just open the terminal from here as well. Write code here and run it from the terminal. It's the exact same terminal. All right. So don't get complex like, why did I write code here initially and why am I writing it here now? It's just a different way of doing things. So I want to run this index.js file. What should I do? Node, just write node. So you're telling node, hey node, please run index.js. And if I do this, you'll see that the output of this code can be seen here. Just because I have the V8 engine on my machine does not mean that whatever worked on browser will work on my machine. Let me quickly try to show what I mean. So on my browser, let me try to print the window object. It's just an object. All right. So this complex object, right? Or let me try to be more clear. Just give me a second. Let me say console.log. So basically, this is an object, and it printed something for me, a huge JSON object, does not matter what it is. Let me try to do the same thing uh, on my machine. Let's see whether that works or not. So let's say here I'm saying console.log window. It's the same command that ran on the browser. Let me try to run this file again, node index.js, and you'll notice that it says window is not defined. Window is not defined. So don't make this assumption that just because it was working on the browser, it would work on your machine. Whoever took the V8 engine code manipulated it, and he has not exposed everything. So all the things related to DOM or window object won't be accessible through Node.js because they are very browser specific things. So those were not exported when Node.js was created. Okay? But your basic JavaScript and everything would definitely work with Node.js. Let's start with NPM now. NPM is definitely a node package manager. What I mean by this is right now you have Node.js, which gives you all the basic JS functionalities. But what if someone has created something in JS and has uploaded it somewhere, and you want to use what someone else has created. So it could be, no, think about a project that you used to copy in your college. You know C++, you know Java, that is fine, but you were supposed to create something. Could be that someone has already created something. So is it wise to create something from scratch or use something that has already been uploaded on the internet? Reuse. Absolutely correct. In general, during coding, you do not begin from the scratch. If you were to begin from the scratch, then you would be starting from writing a coding language. That is not the case, right? You want to reuse, right? And add your own functionality on top of it, just like the Node.js creator did. He used the V8 engine and then he just used a simple C++ to manipulate it. People or other developers might have written JS code and packaged it. So they have a folder on somewhere on the internet, right, with their JS code. And what npm allows me to do is use that all right, someone has uploaded their packages on internet, let me bring those packages into my code. Seems logical, right? If someone has done some work, let me use that work. But how do I use their work? I want their code to be part of my code. To achieve this very thing, npm is used. Npm is node package manager. All the packages that you have plus packages you want to import from the net to import. npm manages all of this. If you're coming from Java background, you might have heard about POM or Maven, stuff like that. It's exactly the same thing. npm is your node package manager. It manages your packages, whatever code you have written plus code that you want to import from internet. Let's try to test this out. So how do we do this? Okay, npm does a lot more as well, but abhi ke liye, this is a good starting point. It helps you create a basic project as well. npm helps you create a basic project template as well. Let me show you how. So let me go back to VS Code. Let me just delete this. I'll just do everything from scratch. All right. So I'm in a folder. I'm from the very scratch. And let's begin. So the first thing that you should do always is for to write npm init. You're telling npm, hey, please create a project for me. Initialize the project for me. Just press this. Again, if you want, I'll be uploading everything on GitHub for you. So don't worry, you don't need to take notes or anything. Let me write the commands here as well. So the first command is npm init. So what's the purpose right now? Just don't mug those commands. The purpose for me right now is to start creating a project. Is that okay? Is that okay? Okay. Again, keeping this very simple. npm init. We'll walk you through. So it will give you some options. It is asking you what is the name of your project. So it is taking the default name, that is Node.js Learning. Right now, what did you do? I did not do anything. I just wrote npm init. That is it. Okay, npm init likha, and I got some options, and it is right now helping me to create a basic project. Is that okay? So it is asking me for some options like what should be the name of your package. The name of my package, it is taking by default Node.js Learning. I can change it if I want to, but I'm not changing it. Let me just press enter. Then it is asking me, is this the right version? Do you want to use this version? Yeah, yeah. I'm like, sure. Do you want to give some description? Why not? Learning Node.js for the first time. All right. What's the entry point of your code? Now, this is very important. Just focus on what I'm saying. If you are someone from other coding backgrounds, whenever your code runs, would you agree that there is an entry point of that code? Let's say in C++, the entry point is the main method, right? In Java, the entry point is what is it? I think it's public static void main, right? Where the JVM starts the execution. Just like that, this code should also have an entry point. This code should also have an entry point, right? So you have to mention, let me just write this down. And since we just have JS files, I have to mention from which JS file would my code start to execute. Which JS file should the execution begin from? Okay. Now this JS file would use other JS file, that would use other JS files. I don't care. I have to tell that where does the code start from. So let me just say it's by default it is taking, should I name it index.js? I'm like, fine, take whatever you want. And then test command. I don't want to give any test commands. We'll come back to this. Git repository. Right now I'm not giving it any repository. All right. Later I'll give it so that I can share my work with you. Keywords, I don't care. Author, I can maybe write Manak for now. License, ISC, yeah, sure. He's saying, is this okay? So at the end, it is asking, you have selected all of this. Is this fine? I'm like, sure, why not? And if you notice, a package.json is created. Do you see this? A JSON file is created, which literally shows whatever you selected. The name was this project, the version is this, description, this is what I wrote, learning Node.js for the first time, is the entry point of your project, which was index.js. We'll talk about scripts in a while. Author is me, license, we don't care that much. So यहाँ पर what packages are being managed? Right now, based on what I'm seeing, the only package that is being managed is the package that I'm creating, right? Package means folder, by the way. So the package is Node.js learning, and in this I can see that only this is being managed. I don't see any other packages. And I also said that apart from your package or your code, npm allows you to work with other packages or other code which someone might have uploaded on the internet. I should be able to prove my point, right? That okay, I am able to import data or code which does not belong to me, and I should be able to use it. Let me just take a example that we'll be using in the future as well. So there is something known as express.js. Okay, this is also a JavaScript code which someone else has written. I have not written this. It's JavaScript code which allows you to create APIs. We'll discuss that as well. But the main point is this JS file or this JS code is something which I have not written. I have not written a file whose name is express.js. So I want this file somehow to be there in my code base, which is exactly what the purpose was, to work with code that I have not written. How do I do this? It's quite simple, to be honest. Notice. What do we need to do? Just write npm install express. And that is it. That is it. You just need to know the name of the thing that you want, and you can tell npm, hey npm, please install this, and that is it. And right now, what this is doing is it is importing the express.js code which someone else has uploaded on the internet into your code. The package.json, which was sort of like the metadata of your project, reveals this. It will say, hey, your project is dependent on some external code, and you can see what that is in the dependencies key. That, okay, my project is dependent on this express code whose version right now is this version 4.18.2. Again, don't worry about what express is. Don't worry about that. Worry about the fact that you are able to import code that you did not write. And where is this code? Notice, as soon as you ran this, no, npm install express, a new folder was created, which is known as the node modules. And in it, you'll see a lot of files, and you'll also see express. So can I say that the initial definition of what a node package manager is in fact the case? I am able to write my own code, and I'm able to use code that I did not write by importing it into my code solution. Something to wonder. Just think about this. Tomorrow, when I'm done with my project, right now, what have I done? I have used this code, which I did not write, to create this. Would you agree with this? That, okay, I am using this to create this thing, whose version is, let's say this. And could be that I'm done with my work and I'm uploading my package on the internet. So tomorrow, someone else can do npm install Node.js learning, and all this code will be there in their code. Does that make any sense? Tomorrow, when I'm done with this, I'll upload this with this name and this version, and someone else will do npm install Node.js learning, and boom, they have all the code that I wrote on my machine. You should start appreciating the beauty of this, because that is how things go. No, someone has done some work, they have uploaded it on the internet. Now you can use that code. Meg is asking, sir, Express code is already there, therefore we can use it directly here. Is it? Almost correct, but not quite. Express is not part of Node.js. All I'm saying is express.js is something that someone else has written and uploaded it on the internet. All right. I am just importing that express.js code into my code solution using npm. Someone has asked a good question. Harshita is asking, will they have Express when they import your project? Yes, they will have it. They will have it because my code is built on top of it. So similarly, we can import React. Sure, why not? If you're making a front-end application, yes, you can. Yes, you can. We'll come to that, Namya. We are not interested in what Express is doing. We are interested in that whatever I want, I can get that using npm. Is this much clear, guys? Is this much clear? Cool. All right. So let me just quickly check my notes. JS file. All right. Window is done. We have started with npm. We just did npm init, start filling details. We have done index.js is the entry point. Okay. Talk about scripts. All right. Cool, cool, cool. Now let me try to write some own code. Why we used question mark? Wait, hold on a second. In a nutshell, we are using dependencies without actually downloading it. No, we are definitely downloading it. We are just mentioning what we need, and whatever we need is being downloaded into this node modules folder. We are definitely downloading it, but we are not doing it manually. I'm just telling npm to do it for me. Is that fine? Is this much clear, guys? Clear. So great. Now let's try to write some of my own code. All right. Let's try to write some of my own code, and there would be no difference. Whatever we were doing before to run our JS code, it's still the case. So let me create a new file. Wait, do I need to create a new file? I don't think so. Okay. So since the start of my project is index.js file, this is where the project starts. I have to create an index.js. So let me just create it. Why does it keep showing me node modules? Ah, that's fine. Let me create index.js. Is this much fine? Yes, yes, the other files are related to Express only. Don't worry about that, guys. All you need to know is Express chahiye tha, I got it. Again, now let's write some of my own code. I don't want to just keep importing and not do anything. Let's write our own code. So I'll keep it as simple as possible. Wait, hold on a second. Hold on a second. Let me try to write anything. Console.log. What should I write? Let me write my own name. Now, how did we execute this code before? How did we execute this code before, guys? I had a JS file. How did I execute it? I just wrote node index.js. That is absolutely correct. Node index.js. Again, this command is for me to execute this index.js file, right? And I can see that whatever I did, I can see it in the console. Would you agree with that? Would you agree with that? Now, if you notice in the package.json also, I said that it should start basically from index.js, right? Again, the point that I'm trying to tell you is, okay, let's talk about scripts first. Can anyone tell me what is the purpose of these scripts? Would anyone like to try? To use JS? Not quite. To run the server. Okay, okay. Like npm start for test purpose and web console. Again, basically, whatever you are writing here, you can create a script out of it. So let me try to show you what I mean. So let me just say that, okay, basically this is the command and this is what happens when you run this particular command. Okay, this is just a command. So let me show it to you. Let me just say npm test. Does this make sense? npm test. What would happen if I do npm test? It literally ran this command in your console. Does that make any sense? Notice error. Do I see the same things here? Do I see the same things here? So it is the scripts is for you to create your custom commands. So if you do npm followed by this word, whatever is written after is it after this is executed. Is this much clear? Is this much clear, guys? Say yes or no, please. All right. So I am seeing that again and again. I have to do index node index.js. I don't want to do this. All right. So let me create my own custom script. So let me just say when I write start. By the way, this is comma separated. Start. Then what should happen? Node index.js should happen, which is the exact same command I'm using again and again to start the application. Does this make sense, guys? I had one command which was doing this. Now I'm saying I don't want to write this again and again. So I'm encapsulating this for this command. So whenever I do npm start, this node index.js would happen. Is that okay? Let's try to give it a shot. Uh, so npm start, and it literally started my it. So npm start did this node index.js, and what do I have in my index.js? This consoling log manak, which is something that I'm seeing here. Does that make sense? Does that make sense, guys? Okay, so you can write your own custom scripts in the package.json so that you don't have to write a particular command again and again. Vanilla JS. Okay. Again, I hope npm is a bit more clear to you now. Write your own code, import other code, run the code that you have written using custom scripts. Is this much fine? Is this much fine, guys? Cool. Now, let's get on to the interesting part, which is the backend part. Again, for someone who is new to backend, this might be a bit complex, but try to follow along with me. It should be a good starting point, even if you don't know it. I'm not going into NPX right now. Okay? Think about this. What do we mean by backend? So I'm sure you guys have heard about front end and back end, these two terms. I'm pretty sure everyone has heard about these, right? Front end is something which someone can very easily understand that okay, this is what I see, what a user would see, right? But what is this backend? What is backend? Okay, what is backend? Backend is the so front end needs data, right? If you're saying that show me Manak's Instagram profile, front end will send some request to backend that hey, I need the information to display. Manak's profile. So the backend will send information. Now the front end, with the information that it got from the backend, will manipulate it, add some colors and whatnot to show it on the screen. But the data that was got that the front end was using came from the backend. Does that make any sense? Does that make any sense? No, client side hota backend is definitely not correct. Client, okay. Again, this is a very rudimentary understanding of what front end and back end means. Back end is where the actual work is happening, all the data and everything. Front end is just fetching that data and displaying that in a beautiful way. Does that make any sense? Okay. And Node.js is concerned with backend. इसके लिए we can use Node.js because for front end we anyway have HTML, CSS, JavaScript which runs on the browser, right? I am more interested in this. I want to use Node.js for backend, and this is what Node.js is being used for in general, to write backend code in JavaScript. Does that make sense? Does that make sense, guys? All right. So before we dive deeper, I'm sure you have heard about these terms as well. Client server architecture. Have you heard about this? Have you heard about this, guys? Again, even if you have not, the idea is very simple. So CS or web development is based on simple ideas. Think about it. Let's take a very simple example. Let's say you are the client, okay, and you are using Instagram, let's say. So Instagram would have some servers. Servers just means machine, by the way, where some code is running, right? And this is technically what your backend is. So I have a server, and you, being the user, are the client, right? Think about this. What happens? You press some button, right? And you see something. That is what a normal user experiences. Would you agree to that? Would you agree to that? That you would do something on front end, and whatever you did on the front end, corresponding to that, you see an output on your screens. That is what a rudimentary user may experience, right? But what happens behind the scenes? Let's try to think about it. So you did something. What you are technically doing by actually doing something on your phone is that you are sending some request. And I'll show it to you on the browser like in a couple of minutes. You are sending some request. Based on the kind of request that you have sent to the server will send you back a response. Okay? But this response is just usually data. Just data. Since you are the client, you are on a phone, you are using some application, there is some front end of that application as well. Front end will use this data that the backend sent and would show it to you in a beautiful way. Does that make any sense? Does that make any sense? So what is happening? You are the client. The front end is rendered at your place, at your phone. All right. You did something like click the button. What you are technically doing is you are sending a request to Instagram server, right? Or the backend. Corresponding to your request, the backend or the Instagram server sends back some data. All right. And the front end on your phone will use that data and show you whatever you requested. Does this idea make any sense to you? Let me prove it to you. Let me just show it to you here. So let's see. Network. All right. Let me try to refresh this page and see what happens. So this is where I can see all my requests, whatever is being sent, stuff like that. So let me just, and you're seeing that all the requests were sent. Can you see this? That this was when I did the refresh, this is what was sent to the server. That this link, again, these are complex things that I'll explain it to you in a while. But this whole request is what was sent. And okay, I don't see the response here. Payload. Again, let's not deep dive into here, but what I'm trying to say is you are sending a request, all right? You are getting a response from the server, and the front end is using that response to show you beautiful stuff. Is this idea clear to you? If you were listening to me carefully, when I said data, that the backend or the server is sending you data, can you guess what is the format of that data? I just showed you two data formats, right? JSON, exactly. So technically, you are receiving JSON from the server, which is what? A way of representing data, right? I am receiving JSON from the server. Front-end code will use that JSON to display you whatever it has to display. But this was the important part, that from the backend, I am supposed to send back JSON to whoever is requesting me anything. Is this much clear, guys? Okay. Let me see if I can show it to you. Hmm. Request URL was this. Response headers. Request headers. I was hoping to see something. Just give me a second, guys. Okay. Interesting. Notice, do you see this? That when I did a refresh, this was the, so there are a lot of things that happens. I can see a response in one of them that this is what I received. You may notice that this is not JSON, right? This seems like HTML. Would you agree with that? This is, by the way, I'm going a bit off topic, but this is known as server-side rendering. So think about this. What did I say? You would receive JSON and the front end would create whatever you want to see using that JSON, right? But it also happens that the backend will itself render whatever the front end was supposed to do and send you the complete thing. So this is known as server side rendering. But anyway, let's not go in there. Uh, but I think you get the idea. Do you have any questions? Do you have any questions, guys? Okay. Client, server. Client will send a request, server will send a response, mostly in the form of JSON. All right. Thanks for confirming that it's clear. And but why did I just suddenly tell you this? Because I want to build this server. I want to build this server using Node.js. Is that fine? Sir, SSR once again, please. Is SSR a typo for sir, or do you want me to repeat server-side rendering? We can send HTML file to client browser as a response to using Express.js. Yes, Ganesh, we can. Server side. Okay, okay. So basically, what I'm saying, guys, is it's not that complex. Client usually sends a request, right? Server usually responds with some JSON response, and the front end at the client side would use this JSON response to create HTML, which is what you see. Would you agree with this? Would you agree with this? And when I mentioned server side rendering, what I meant was that sometimes it also happens that the server does not send, the server won't send you JSON, rather, it will send you the whole HTML page so that on the client side, front end doesn't have to do anything. Right? So this is what server side rendering is. This is what I was showing you here as well. Uh, that in here, the response that I got from the server was itself HTML. This is what server side rendering is. Muhammad, it can respond in any way you want, but ideally it should be JSON. That is what the specifications for REST say. Ideally, it should be JSON. Earlier, it used to be XML. But I hope server-side rendering is clear, guys. It's a simple concept that front end doesn't have to do work. Ideally, front end, what it does is it uses the JSON to create HTML, which you see. But it so happens that sometimes the server can also send you HTML so that the front end doesn't have to do anything. This is what is known as server-side rendering, like render the stuff on the server side only. Arey bhai, why are you going into React? I'm not discussing that. Meaning a separate code is written in JS to handle requests just like class, meaning server. Yeah, exactly, exactly. And that is what I was about to write as well. Why? Why we switch from XML to JSON? Because JSON is faster and it is easier to read. If I show you the ChatGPT prompt that I had opened, you would notice that this this is a lot more lightweight. Saloni is asking, is SSR recommended? Depends on the use case. Let's not go in there. Let's not go in there. This occupies much less space than this. And there are other reasons as well, readability and all of that. But in general, just forms of data representation. And yeah, JSON is what is used now. Earlier, XML was used. Is that okay? Umesh, XML syntax is not like PHP. It is actually the opposite. PHP syntax is like XML, just like HTML. But anyway, I hope client server architecture is clear. It's a simple architecture, to be honest. There is a client, which is most probably you. There is a server where the backend is. Client will send a request, server will send a response back. Is this much clear? Right? All right. So what do we want to do? Where does Node.js come into the picture? I want to write this server component, which I said in the client server architecture, using Node.js, so that anyone can request something using what I have written in Node.js. Does that make sense? Let me just write this down. Or maybe we are not doing this, by the way. Is it better to learn PHP nowadays? I don't want to demotivate you, but I never had to learn it and I've hardly seen people do it. But again, the concepts are there in every language. So if you want to learn it, please go for it. What is SSR? So basically what I want is I want to write backend in Node.js right now. And we'll create a very simple application. Backend in Node.js. That is what we want to do. And what would this backend do? Think about it. What did I just say? Backend will give response to the request it receives. Is this much okay, guys? Is this much okay? Now, it could be that you don't know how this works in general. We also have to talk about APIs. Okay, let me use a different color. Okay, the worst color. Let me just increase the thickness of it. How many of you know what is an API? Or rather, a better question is, how many of you don't know what an API is? No, 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 I'm not interested in the full form, please. I have known the full form for years in my college days, but it was only after I started working that I realized what it is. All right. Again, let me try to explain it to you. Like assuming that you have, guys, just wait, hold on. You don't have to write it. Think about this. Hmm, think about this. That assuming that most of you have worked with either Java, okay, C++, or for JS for that matter. Would you agree that you wrote methods? Would you agree that you wrote methods in these programming languages? Would you agree with this? Where could you access these methods? Guys, please stop writing irrelevant stuff. Just focus on what I'm saying. Where were you able to access these methods? Like a very generic answer would be, sir, if I have a Java application, right, and I wrote a method in that folder, chances are that this method is only accessible in my project. Can I say this? Like a very generic term, this is. Like if I have a project and I wrote a method here, there, then chances are that the method that I wrote, that is only accessible in that project. Would you agree with that? Or in other words, can I say that if I have an application, Java application or JavaScript does not matter, and I wrote a method, can I say that you cannot access that method? Can I say this? Can I say this? Tell me. Can I also say even I cannot access that method outside of that application? Very natural, right? If you have a project and you have written a method in that method is only available in that project and nowhere else. That's a very simple way of understanding this. APIs are exposed methods in a very crude way that, okay, I have a method, like a generic method I had, and it was only exposed in my application or in my project. But what if I want to expose this method outside of my project so that anyone may access this method? Does that make any sense? Such a method which is exposed outside of the application or can be called from anywhere outside of the application is technically an API. Would you agree with this? Even if you don't agree with this, just trust what I'm saying. That, okay, if there is a method, if there is some code that I can access outside of the application, that code is sort of like an API. Yeah, I'll give an example. Don't worry about it. Is it like open source? No, no, open source is a completely different thing. Basically, exposed data. I would say exposed code. Someone, if I have created an API or someone else has created an API, chances are that I, who has not created that API, can access that method, right? Let me show it to you. Let me use a very simple API. Chuck Norris was it? Wait, hold on a second. Why am I seeing images? Just give me a second, guys. Again, just for the sake of understanding, uh, this is sort of like an API. I know this might be a bit complex, but bear with me. So, what is happening is, wait. Can't I call the API from here only? Okay, let me just copy paste this. So basically what I'm trying to say is someone has created a method to generate random jokes. Someone has created a method to create random jokes. All right. And the API is this. What I mean by that is I don't know the name of his method, right? I don't know the name of his method, but that method's API is this. So when I try to hit this API, I am technically calling the method behind this API. Does that make any sense? Does that make any sense? Right? Earlier, the methods or the functions that you used to write were only limited to your project. Okay. And I don't want that. I want everyone to use this method. So let me try to hit this and you will get a joke. It's a weird joke, but does not matter. What matters is that you received a JSON with some values. Does that make any sense? Does that make any sense that you hit an API? This is definitely an API. All right. And what is an API? It is a way of call. It is the way to call an exposed method. Yes, Mehek, we can implement this in our code, and that is what the aim is. But before that, I have to explain you what an API is. So we are right now not creating an API. Think about it. I did not create this API. I am actually trying to call an already existing API which someone else created. अरे भाई अभी तो Node.js you are reading, then why are you asking me whether I should do React.js right now? Just focus on Node right now. No? Again, guys, is API clear? It's just a method which is exposed. All right. You don't know the name of the method, but for each exposed method, you'll get something like this. So on this server, if you write jokes/random, you're trying to access an API. You don't know the name of the API, sorry, the name of the method behind this API, but all you know is this. So if you try to uh, hit this, you will get some data corresponding to this method. If I again try to hit this, I'll get a different joke. Does that make any sense? Send the request to his API. That is what I'm doing now. Okay, let me try to explain it to you. Oh, we are short on time, it seems. But anyway, okay. So basically, what happened was, let's try to analyze this. It's the client server architecture. Let me try to explain it to you. Client server. Who is the client here? We are the client. We, the browser that we are using. This is the client. All right. And the server is जिसने भी ये लिखा है, Chuck Norris, whoever this guy is, there is a backend server. All right. And technically, what I'm doing is I am requesting something. How am I requesting it? Using this URL. When I hit enter here, a request is being sent. Like, please get me a random joke. Is that okay? Is that okay? Please give me a random joke. So I send this request, and corresponding to this request, I received a response, which is what I am seeing here. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Let me take a screenshot of this. Again, think about it. I did not create this API. I did not create this API. This API was there. I just tried to call this API. Is that okay? Yes, Visu, I cannot pronounce that, but you're right. But I hope this makes a little more sense now that APIs are nothing but exposed methods. And that is why it is said that APIs are a way for two softwares to communicate with each other. Because think about it. You have software one, you have software two. Let's say software two has some exposed methods. Method one, method two, method three. So software one can call this particular method and get data. Software one can call this particular method M2 and call data. So in a way, I can say that these methods M1, M2, M3 is how software 1 and software 2 are communicating. Would you agree with that? Right? And that is why the name API, application programming interface. It's an interface between two applications. Using these APIs, this application can communicate with this application. Very similar to how two applications right now, my browser and Chuck Norris's server are communicating with this API. Does that make any sense? Yeah. All right. All right. Any questions up till now, guys? You have 2 minutes. All right. I was not expecting that, but great. So now, whoever was asking, do I need JS or not? Now you definitely need JS. Half an hour more. Now you definitely need JS, and I will be a bit faster, but I'll provide you with the code. You can analyze the code on your own. Just try to bear with the concept of it. Even if you don't know JS, it's fine. I'll explain everything, what is supposed to happen, how is it happening. But right now, a little JS would be involved because I'm supposed to write APIs. All right. But before that, how many of you know what is CRUD or have heard about this word? Yes, that is the goal here, Umesh. API for okay. I have never heard. That's fine. That's fine. Heard. ठीक है. Basically, CRUD means create, update. Sorry. Create, read, update, delete. Right? And this is a very generic term if you think about it. Even if you don't know backend, even if you don't know APIs, would you agree that, okay, assuming that you have studied data structures at some point, right? Each data structures allow you to do CRUD operations. Each data structure. Array list. Let's take an example for array list. You can create new elements from the array list by doing array list.add. You can read elements from the array list by doing array list.get. You can update elements, array list.set. You can delete by .remove. Basically, these four operations is something that should always be supported. And there is an acronym for it known as CRUD. Create, read, update, delete. Is that fine? Should not be that difficult to understand, I think. Is this fine, guys? All right. So if the backend that I'm creating a backend, which is what I'm about to do in a while, and client is trying to access this backend using APIs. I should at least have four types of APIs. What are those four types? An API for creating stuff, an API for reading stuff, an API for updating stuff, an API for deleting stuff. Does that make any sense? Does this make any sense? I'm going to use some technical words now. REST, I'm not going into what REST is. You can assume REST is a protocol. It is a set of guidelines which help us to write good APIs. So if I'm writing a good API using REST principles, chances are my APIs are RESTful. Don't get into what REST is because we don't have a lot of time. All I'm saying is it is just a set of specification that please write APIs in this way, follow these rules, stuff like that. All right. All right. And from the REST principles, these have different names. So when you're trying to create something using an API, it's technically, in technical words, it's a post API that you are trying to create something. So the word in RESTful languages is post. Is that okay? Again, technical words, that's it. Okay? When you're trying to read something, the technical terms in REST specification is get. Is that okay? For update, it is, I think there are two words, put and patch. For now, I'll go with patch, but there are two words to be honest. And for delete, it is delete only. Is that okay? Is this much fine, guys? Again, technical words. That's it. Technical words. If you're trying to create, if there is an API which is trying to create something, then chances are it's a post API. If there's an API which is trying to read something, if you think about it, the API that I just hit before was a read type of an API because I am getting data from the server. I'm not creating data on the server. I'm not updating data on the server. Neither am I deleting anything. I am literally saying, give me a random joke. I got a random joke. This is a get kind of an API. Is this much fine, guys? Is this much fine? All right. So, and yeah, we are mostly bothered about these kind of APIs. With the time that I have, let's see how many APIs can I show you. Please tell me about RESTful APIs. We can invest more time, sir. Please. No, 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 no. You can read it on your own. It's just a set of principles. It's just a set of principle. I'm not getting into that. Arey, but your question is very generic. Like, what kind of an API does Google Pay use? It uses all kinds of API. Depends on the functionality. No, if you want to see your balance, you're not doing anything. So that would be a get kind of an API. If you want to give someone money, then chances are it's not a get API. Rather, it should be a post API. Stuff like that. No, no, I'm not getting into REST versus SOAP right now. Yes, Aditya, you can say the same for now. Is that okay? So it depends on the functionality. What does Google Pay use? It's a very generic question, right? What method in Google Pay are you talking about? If you're trying to read the balance that you have in your account, then it's a get API. Yes, Rudra, I will do that. That's the plan. While making a transaction, I think it should be a post API because you are, I mean, it could be a get API, put API as well because you are trying to update your account balance and someone else's account balance. But a lot of things are happening in the backend. But it's definitely not a get API if you're trying to do a transaction. That's for sure. All right. All right. Let's get to the complex stuff now. Okay. So basically, I want to create APIs. Okay. Achha, I have to tell you one more thing, guys. Would you agree that when you're running your application, like when the methods, okay, just a simple application, not a backend application, like you have written some Java code or any JavaScript code, for a method to work, that code should run, right? Would you agree with that? For a method to work, the code runs. Would you agree to that? Would you agree to that? Right now, the APIs that I have are exposed methods. So it's not that. So can I say they have to be ever running, like the machine or the code behind it has to run continuously, right? Because if you think about it, this API that I'm hitting somewhere on a machine, this code is running, no? That is why whenever I'm trying to call this method, I'm getting a response. Can I say this? Can I say this? So in other words, what I'm trying to teach you is that the backend application where you have written your APIs, so to speak, you have written your APIs. This should keep running on some machine and on some port. Does that make any sense? Server needs to be running continuously. Exactly. So right now, like some machine and on that machine, some port. This application needs to keep on running, right? I can quickly show it to you. Like for this, I can say, just a second, let me refresh. Where is network? Oh, that's why. So I think this is the machine. HTTPS API chucknorris.io. This is the machine on which this API is running. And what is that API? Right now, it is this. Okay, maybe not. Wait, hold on a second. This is the API. This part shows you the machine. HTTPS API chucknorris.io. Is that okay? You can also figure out the IP if you know how to use the command prompt properly. But the point I'm trying to make is this API that you're hitting and you're getting a response, it is running on some machine which is continuously running. The machine is this api.chucknorris.io. On that machine, joke/random is what is denoting to a unique method. You will realize that in a while now. But again, just wanted to point out that for a backend application to work, it has to run on some machines, some port all the time. Is that okay? Is this much clear, guys? If I want to create a backend API, we need to do the same. Again, the code that I'm about to write, if you know JS, you'll be comfortable. If you don't know JS, chances are it would be a bit complex, but just focus on the concept because every line that I'm about to write, I'll explain that line, like what's the purpose of this line. Okay? All right, all right, all right. So we have index.js, which is the entry point of my code, right? Would you agree to this much? Would you agree to this much, guys? Okay. So first of all, in order to create backend APIs, that is where Express is used. So earlier, when there was not Express.js, even then you could create APIs, but the process was complex. The whole point of Express is to create APIs effectively and in a simple manner. So whoever was asking what the hell is Express, Express allows me to create. Again, don't confuse this create with thread wala create. Okay, let me write something simpler to make APIs. Is that okay? Again, I'm stating in a very simple way. It does a lot of things, but for now, it will help me to create APIs. Is that fine? Is that fine? All right. Hmm. Okay. So I want to use Express to create APIs. Again, I'm about to write JavaScript code, so don't worry about it. Just focus on the concept. So in order to use Express, right now I have Express in my solution, in my code, but I'm not using it. In order to use it, first I have to import it. Like in Java, you use import statement. In C++, you use hash include, la la la. So in uh, JS, you have to require that. You have to import it somehow. So let me import it. So const express is equal to require require and let's say I want express. Is that okay? Is that okay, guys? All right. Okay. And I need to run this application on some port, right? Would you agree with that as well? So let's say, let me just try to define a variable first. Port is equal to, let's say it is running on port 8080. Is that okay? So all applications run on some machines, some port. Is this much clear, guys? Is this much clear? Now, I have to first create the backend server. All right. Basically, if you think about it, when I'm trying to hit this API, whoever has written this API, his machine or his backend, I don't know in what language he has written that backend. Why port is mentioned in uppercase? But because it's a constant for me. I always like to keep constants in uppercase. You can keep it in lowercase, does not matter. What I'm trying to say is that his machine is listening on some port. So a lot of things can run on your machine, but each thing that is running on your machine is listening on some port. Is that okay? Like on this port, this application is running. So that application has to be on that particular port. Does that make any sense? It's like saying your house has a lot of gates. Your house has a lot of gates, but it's not that you will entertain guests from any of the gates. There is a gate dedicated for you to entertain your guests, right? Similar to that, the house is the server and the port is the gate. And you want to expose your application on your house or on your machine on this particular gate or port. Does that make any sense? Okay. So I have to start listening on some port. Let me write that port. All right. So I have defined the port that on 8080 I want to listen. Is that okay? Now, in order for me to listen, I need to again use Express. So from the Express, I need something. So let me just say sorry about that, const tab is equal to, can we use any port? Yeah, you can use almost any port. Some ports are booked, but in general, it should not be a problem. It's like saying, can I use any gate of my house? It's your house, you can do anything. Is that okay? Express also goes with JS code, or is it a language? It is definitely not a language, Ishika. It's a package written in JS. And I want to use that package. Anyway, I got this app from Express, and now I can use this app to listen onto the code that I have defined. Is that okay? So something like, can someone help me? I think it's app dot listen. And here I can define where I want to listen. Is that okay? I hope you know callback functions. If you don't, then it could be a bit of a problem, but I'll just help you with it. You can check available ports in your computer to use. Exactly. Okay. So I want to listen on this port. Port, comma. Let me just try to give it a string. What string should I use? Or maybe I should give it a callback. Wait. I'm giving it a callback. If you don't know callbacks, don't worry about it. This is just a function without any name. Is that okay? It's just a function without any name, and I would define what would happen in this function, an arrow function, so to speak. Yes. Is that fine? Okay. Let me write something here. So let me just write application started on port. What port? Let me try to print this. Yeah, that should be fine. Why do I need a full stop? Okay. So right now I'm saying I have just set up a server with, there are no APIs right now. I have not written any methods which are exposed as APIs. All I'm saying is I'm setting up everything. So I have on this machine, my machine, on this port, this application should listen. Is that okay? Is that okay, guys? Okay, let's try to test at least this much. So basically what I'm trying to say is, as soon as this application starts and it starts listening on this port 8080, this should be printed that application started on port 8080 or la la la. Is that fine? Is that fine, guys? Tell me. Chalo. How do I start my application? I think I wrote a script before. What was that script? Um, npm start. Sorry about that. Let's see. Okay, I got an error. It seems event on server instance start already in use. Okay, I think I know the problem. I was running it before the class. So I actually this is a good thing. So before this class, I was running something on my machine on this particular port. All right, and that is what it is saying that something is already in use. So let me just stop that. I think I can stop it. Okay, I have stopped what was running on 8080 and let me again start it. So it's taking some time, but I think it is done. npm start. No, I think it should have printed something. Or why is it not printing anything? npm start. Is it stuck? I don't think so. Port 8080. Let me just cancel it. I think it has begun, but why is it not printing anything? I'm not sure. I was expecting a log line here, to be honest. Explain middlewares. Well, that will explain them to, and we can use Express.js directly, like without Node.js, right? You can if you want to. You can if you want to. But I don't see. I think it is starting, but for some reason I don't see the log line, which I'm printing here. I'm using Express, which is absolutely fine. I'm using an app. App is exporting Express. So I've defined the port. App.listen. I don't see a problem here, to be honest. Does anyone see a problem here? I'm pretty sure it has started. So please change the port. Console.log post. Use console. See that text. Ah, okay. Sorry about that. I have not console.log it. Sorry. Okay. Thanks. Sorry about that. Console.log. Let's restart it. Okay, let me just do npm start. And what should happen is, as soon as my application starts, I'm saying as soon as you start listening, please print this line. What to print? Application started on port, this port, 8080. And if this is the case, then it should start. If it is running, it should print it. Earlier also it started, but I did not print it. And I can see that application started on port 8080. So at least my application is started. And now I'm at a phase where I can start writing my APIs. Is that okay? Sorry about that, guys. Any questions up till this point? Can we write number in any number in port? So there are a lot of ports. You have to check what ports are available. You can check it on Google, like you have to run a command on your command prompt and it should be fine. But in general, I can change the port as well if you want. Let me just stop the application. And let me say I want to use the port 8000, right? And let me try to again uh, start the application. And you can see that this time also the application has started, but it is on port 8000. So it's completely up to you, but there are a lot of blog ports as well. If the website is live, how to get ports without crashing anything? Why do you need the port if the website is running? Again, I think there is a confusion. If it is someone else's website, you don't need the port at all. And if it is your, then you would only know no, what port you have used to write this code. It's like saying, I am writing this backend. How do I know what port I have used? I am the one who has defined the port, no? So this question doesn't mean anything. Anyway, I'll stick to 8080 because that's what I like when I'm creating backend applications. Let me just stop this again. All right. So I'm at a point where I have my backend application is running, but there are zero APIs in it. So how can we stop the running code that is running on our system? Ah, okay. Okay. First of all, okay, let me just show it to you. So right now, it is running on port 8080. If you want to stop the application, Control C and just press Y. This is one way. If you don't know what is running on your system, there is a thing known as Task Manager. I'm not sure what you have used it for, but if you go to the details, you'll see everything there. And there are commands that you can run on the command prompt as well to see what all ports are blocked. But whatever is running on your system can be seen from here. I'm running VS Code. So the exe file corresponding to VS Code can be seen in here. Chrome, and everything can be seen in here. So if you have an application which is running and you don't want it to run, you can just end it from here. Anyway, again, let's just stick to it, guys. Last में doubt से लूंगा. ठीक है? So I am at a point where I can start writing APIs. Is that okay? But right now I don't have any database. Like where do I get the information from? Maybe I can send hard-coded values, but I'm just thinking what I should do. So let's try to create a simple API first and then we'll see what happens. So how to create APIs? First, I want to create, I would give you homework as well, CRUD APIs. Okay? So the most simplest of them is the read one, read API, because I'm just returning some value to whoever is calling me. Is that okay? Would you agree with that? Just type this in your command. Is this much fine, guys? So let's try to create an API, all right, which will return something to the user. We'll create something meaningful as well, but let's try to start simple. How do I do it? So the app that I got from the Express, I can leverage it. App dot. What kind of an API am I creating? A read API. Yes. And based on REST principles, what kind of an API is this? So for reading, it should be a get kind of an API. Would you agree with this? Okay. So you can write app dot get. Is that fine? Is that fine? App dot get. Now, this method will accept two arguments. This app dot get will accept two arguments for now. The first one is the path. Like, what do you need to write after the base URL to reach this method? Is that okay? And the second thing would be a callback, which again takes a request and a response. So this is what you receive, and this is what you set, and this is what is returned to the user. Does that make any sense? Does that make any sense? I'll show it to you. Don't worry. So the first thing is the path. Like, on which path is this method accessible? So what should I do? Let's take a very simple path for now. I'm saying after the IP, like base URL, just write, I don't know, um, book maybe, because that is what I want to eventually create. Okay. So slash book. So after the base URL, just write slash book, and you should be able to trigger this callback method, which I am about to write. Does that make any sense? That when you write after the base URL slash books and press enter, this method would be invoked. Now you have to complete this method. That is what I said was API was. It is an exposed method. So this method is exposed via an API, which looks something like this, some base address followed by slash book. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? All right. This method receives two things. One is the request and one is the response. Is that okay? The request is what you get, response is what you give back. Is that okay? Just like the client server architecture. Is that much okay, guys? Is that much okay? Quickly tell me. ठीक है. अभी के लिए let me try to return something very normal. I'm saying return response dot JSON. So I want to use this object response dot JSON. I'm saying for now, just return mana. Is that fine? So whoever accesses this API, which is something something slash book, he'll get mana as the output. Request and response क्या है? अरे अभी तो बताया था client server architecture में request is what you get, response is what you give. So whatever you're passing comes in this request object, and whatever you want to give back is what you have to set and return in the response. No? Why request.json? Because I want to, okay, I don't want to go deep inside it, but for now you can say that I want to return a JSON response. What is callback? That is absolute JavaScript. I cannot go into what is callback now. You can assume that callback is just a method. I'm sorry I used the word callback. It is just a method. So this, which I'm calling as a callback, it is a method which takes two arguments, request and response, and I'm returning response.json of mena. That's it. Is that okay? If you don't know callback, just forget about it. I'll use the word method. Okay. So what have I done? I have created a method which says return the string mena. And what did I say? API is an exposed method. So I want to expose this method. This method how? With this name slash book is the API URL. Yes, I will show it to you in a while. Let's try to start the application. Okay, so npm start. So the application has started on port 8080. That is fine. And right now there is just one API. Yeah, I cannot pronounce your name for God's sake, but request in the parameter is unused. It's fine. Someone is passing some request. I don't need anything from that request. Right now, I'm just trying to show you how to create an API or get API. So I'm hard coding it that whoever is sending me anything, I'm just returning back to him the word menu. Is that okay? Eventually, we'll use it. All right. Let's see whether this works or not. So wait, hold on a second. So what do I need to write? Let's just focus on this. So in general, okay, this does not get zoomed in. Weird. I need to write localhost 8080. Why localhost? Because the machine's name is localhost. Whenever you're doing work locally, the name of the machine is localhost, followed by on which port. Which port is my application running on? I think it is running on port 8080. Yes. So on localhost, this machine's 8080 port, I want to access what is there in this path. Which path? The path book. So just write book after this, and you'll see that you received a response mena. Congratulations, you have just created your first API. Does that make any sense? You have used this API to call a method that you have written in your backend application, right? If you know this, rest everything is smooth sailing because you know how to create APIs. Now, what that method would be is completely up to the developer, right? That how complex that method has to be. But now you know how to expose methods as APIs. Of course, Priya, you can. That's the whole point, no? So please explain this topic. What do you mean this topic? Node.js APIs, what? Guys, I just have 10 minutes. Can we please focus on what I'm doing and then we can take questions? All right. But the fact that you should consider is you were successfully able to expose this method outside of the code. From where did I call this method? Did I call it from the code? I don't think so. I called it from the browser. Does that make sense? Please show fast to how to qualify. Please show fast to how to store data in a file. Yeah, I'll do that in a while. But this was all about APIs. Like I just created my first get API. What about remaining post, put, delete? I'll do that in a while. And this is a very basic API. I want to create something meaningful. So just give me a like. Let's just do it. Okay. Any doubts up till this point? I don't think so. I created a get API. It was accessible by localhost 8080/book. And when you do this, you are able to access this method or call this method, right? Cool. Now, let's quickly discuss our project. It could be that I have to copy paste some stuff to save time, but it should be fine. So basically, I want to create a book application. Maybe I need to extend this. I need to create a book application, and it's a very simple application. I have some books, right? If I have some books, that means that this is data, right? And if this is data, I have to store this data. So right now, since I have not taught you MongoDB or any sort of database, I'll put everything in a file, and I'll read stuff from the file, delete stuff from the file, so on and so forth. File में I'll have a list of books. All right, I'll have a list of books, and this is one where I want to apply CRUD. So I should be able to create new books into this file of books. I should be able to read all the books that are there in this file. I should be able to update a particular book. I should be able to delete a book, so on and so forth. Does that make sense? If you want some JSON example, then how we pass it in the response? We'll see. I think most of your doubts would be clear when I'm done with this. But right now, do you understand the idea of the project? That okay, I have a list of books in some file. I want to read books from that file. I want to add books to that file, so on and so forth. Is that much clear? Apply CRUD on the file itself. Exactly. Oof. All right. Let's see. I think I already created a file. Let me just quickly see. So this was a JSON file. Let's see. I think mockdata2.json. Let me put it in my directory. Copy. Where is it? Just hold on a second, guys. Just running. Let me put this file here. Mockdata2.json. That's great. So I have this file, and if you notice, this represents. Wait, hold on a second. Let me just format this. Okay. So this is an array of JSONs. So there are a lot of JSON objects in here. So this is one book whose ID is one. First name is Sharon. Last name is okay. Author's name is this. Author's last name this. Email la la la. Does not matter. What matters is you have a list of books. Is that okay? Rudra, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to do this. Let me quickly ask if I can extend this a little bit. Just hold on a second. If I'm allowed, then I'll extend it. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that I have a list of books. So I have my data now. Is that okay? I have my data now. Is that okay? And this is where I want to apply the CRUD. Okay. So if you notice, this is an array of JSON objects. So each JSON object represents a book. All right. And I have already created this mock static data so that I don't have to create it with you. Cool. So right now, let's try to read first. How can I get certificate? Attend to karo pehle class ya puri. Anyway, I want to first implement the get API. What should be the get API? See all the books. Is that okay? I want to see all the books. How can I do that? What code can I write to see all the books? I can manipulate this method only. In fact, the name should be books. Get localhost 8080 books. So it should show you all the books, right? Does that make any sense? Does that make any sense, guys? Quickly tell me. So first I need to import books into my code. Right now, this is just data, right? I want this data in my code. Would you agree with that? Batao. Chalo, let's import this data. So I have the file and I can read that file into a JSON. So let's say const books is equal to, can't I just import a JSON file? I think I cannot. Require, require what? In the present working, sorry about that. In the present working directory, I want to read this file mock underscore data slash two. So mock, so everything is capital, it seems. Let me just copy paste the name. Okay. So basically, whatever I have in this file is now there in this JavaScript object books. Is that fine? Is this fine, guys? Batao jaldi. I think this should be fine. Okay, now I have the books. All right. And obviously, this is an array. This is an array. right? So what this API should do is, what this API should do is, it should just return the books, right? If I want to see all the books. Would you agree with that? You can console.log books, but it's better, no? Let me just return it and see what the output is. I'm assuming, Varun, that you want to console the books because you want to see what value is in there. Let me just return the value and I can see from the browser itself. So let me just write books. All right. So I've made some code change. So let me stop the application and restart it. npm start. And now when I'm doing localhost 8080/books, this method should be triggered. And what is this method doing? It is returning the books in the JSON format to the browser which called it. So let's try to again hit it. Okay, because the API has changed, it is actually books and not book. So let me just do books. And if you notice, you get all this data. Would you agree with that? Would you agree with that? Guys, we have extra half an hour. Everything is still. Chalo, half an hour extra mil gaya. I hope you stay there with me. Varna there is no point. But we just implemented our first good looking API, which is a get API, which what is it doing? It is returning you all the books. Would you agree with that? Sir, show code once for calling. Dekh lo bhai code. So I'm saying whenever someone tries to access this books path, like localhost 8080/books, whenever someone does this, this particular method is triggered. Now, what is this method doing? It is taking a request and a response. All right. Okay. Request and response, I don't care about the request because what is the request saying? Get me all the books. So I don't need a parameter from the user, like which book do you want to see? I just need to see all the books. So I'm not even bothered about the request. And this is what is returned to the user. I mean, this is the response. So I'm just setting in the response.json, give books. Is that okay? Those are some parameters for the function, right? Exactly. This is the function, and these are just two parameters of the function. Is that okay? And I'm saying in the response.json, set books. Like this is what I want to return. So as soon as I'm doing this, someone called this method returned books, and this is what I'm seeing here. If you think about it, what Amazon does is in the backend, an API like this would be there. The browser would call this API, this kind of a data is returned, and the front end will use this JSON data to render it in a beautiful way and show it on the website. Okay, you want to see where I called the so this is what I did. I had a file mockdata2.json, right? This has all the data. I'm just reading that file into a JavaScript object, and later I'm using that JavaScript object. Guys, if I'm just saying this, I hope you're not coding it with me. I mean, it's completely your choice, but I would be giving this code to you in a GitHub repository. So it's not a matter of concern. Just focus on what I'm doing. Can you please provide this JSON? Oh, why not? I'm putting it in the chat. Huh? I cannot paste it in the chat. Okay, it seems that I don't have this access. Don't worry, guys. I'll put this in GitHub only, so you'll get access to it. Don't worry about it. Okay? All right. Index.js. So we have just created our first API, which is returning me the data of all the books. So far, so good. Yes, Garima, you can say that. It was a little late here. Can you share the repo again? There is no repo right now. I'll create the repo at the end of the class. Half an hour. All right. So right now, what did I do? Mm, created a get API. Sorry, created a get API, which is returning the data for all books, right? Would you agree with that? Would you agree with that? Agree. But think about it. What if I don't want to see the data of all books? What if this is done, by the way? I want data for, I don't know, book with ID, I don't know, 5 maybe. There would be a book with ID 5. Let's see. So can you see this book with ID 5? I just know that there is an ID and I want to see the book details for this ID 5, right? I want to create an API which gives me details about a particular book. That is what I want. Is that okay? In such a case, if you notice, you would need the information from the request, right? Earlier, what was happening? Give me everything. That's why I was not bothered about the request parameter of the method. But right now, if someone is saying, please give me the details of the book 5, that means I need the number 5 from the user. Would you agree with that? Would you agree with that? Or in a very layman terms, can I say I can create an API just for ID 5 that if the URL is get localhost 8080/book/5 return this object, I can do that. But you can have 1,000 books. You cannot create 1,000 APIs, right? Do you know what I mean? So just because I need it for ID 5 doesn't mean I will create an API for ID 5 or create an API for ID 6. Ideally, I should create something like a generic method, like something like accepts an input, accepts a parameter X. The client can pass some parameter value, just like we have in methods, no? Again, okay, maybe I am complicating this. What I'm trying to say is I want something like this. So let's say an API where someone will pass some number, could be any number. Let's call this X for now. And my API should process this X, find book with ID equal to X and return that book. Is the idea clear to you? Is the idea clear to you? Right? Some ID would be passed. I don't care what ID, whatever that ID is, I will compare it with the list of JSONs that I have. And if I found a match, I will return that particular book back to the client. Is that fine? Calling specific data, absolutely correct. That is what the intention here is. Chalo, let's try to do this. So again, I don't want to disturb this API. This is completely fine. It is allowing you to get all the books. I'll create a new API. So how do I create an API? I can just copy this. Okay, and this time I'm saying if someone tries to do book slash some ID. So this is how you pass a variable parameter, like a dynamic parameter, that whatever value someone is passing after the books, it will be stored in here in this ID variable. And I can access this ID from the request object. Does that make any sense? Does this make any sense, guys? Okay. So let's first try to extract this ID. I think it would be in the request. So tell me what I should write. Let's extract this in a variable first. Const ID is equal to what? Request dot. Where would it be? In the params body request query URL. I know this involves knowledge about HTTP methods. So the request you are getting, no, let me just talk about this also. So the request you are getting is technically an HTTP message, which has a lot of things. It has a body, it has some headers, it has some params, it has a lot more. Okay? And it has the path as well. It has the path as well. So whatever you are writing in here, this is the path, and it is part of the HTTP request that you are sending. I can show you how the HTTP request looks like. Let's see. So this is how the HTTP request actually looks like. It has a URL, it has a method, what kind of a method it is. You can see it is a get kind of a method. There is status code. I've not talked about this, but again, what I'm trying to get to it as what I'm trying to say is this thing that you're mentioning in the path is part of the params. Okay. Again, I know I have not talked about it, but fine. Request dot params dot ID. Is that fine? So the request that I'm sending, उसके params में जो ID mentioned है, I want to store it in some variable. Is that okay? Is that okay? And now what do I need to do? In the list of books, I have books, right? I have books. In this list, if any of the books ID matches with the ID that I have, I should return that book. Would you agree with that? Would you agree with that? Params is just part of the HTTP request. It's a field in the HTTP request. And if you mention it something like this, it is stored in the params. Just use it as a knowledge. Okay? So I have extracted the ID. And what am I trying to do? I think I have the books as an array, so I can use the find method of the array, right? Yeah. So I want to figure out a book. Just hold on a second. Figure out a particular book which has this ID. Which has this ID. How can I do that? I can maybe use the books dot find method, right? And I think this accepts a callback. So for sorry about that. This accepts a callback. What is that callback? For each book in this books, check whose ID matches with the ID that I have, right? That should be fine. So book dot ID should match with the ID that I have, right? And at this point, I've figured out the book, right? And all I need to do is return this book. Wait, did I write it in a wrong place? Okay. I just need to return this book. So yeah, that should be it. कितना ऊपर से जा रहा है? You can use anything you want. I know that I have kept the IDs unique. You can use find one as well. It's completely fine. But the idea should be clear that I have the ID that I extracted from the request. All right. So I have it in this variable. Then I am looping through all the books that are there in this books array, and I'm giving it a method that if any of the book ID that are there in this books array matches with the ID that I have in the request params, then please store it in this variable and later return this book. Does that make sense? Why ID after parameters? Because I want to extract the ID, no? Does that make sense? Time is not up, guys. We have till 2:30. Don't worry about it. Okay? So let's try to test this out. Again, I hope the logic is at least clear. Even if you don't know JavaScript, the logic should be clear, no? But that also we should give some output error. We can give some output error Saloni, but think about it. If it is not in the books array, it is not an error, right? But because it could be that whatever you're searching for is not there in the list. In that case, this book would be null, which is fine by me. Again, that is just more handling that you can do on your own front. I don't feel the need that I should do it here. And it's not really an error if you think about it, because it could be, whatever you're looking for does not exist. Again, you can do it on your own. Okay, let's see. Let me terminate the application with the books object and displaying matched values. Yes, Pete, you can say that. All right, let me start the application again. All right, I have started the application, but to be honest, this won't work. This won't work. I'll tell you why it won't work. Okay, I want to access this API. So what should I do? Let me open it in a new tab. Localhost 8080 and books followed by 1. So ideally, I should get this, no? This particular book. Would you agree? Would you agree? That is the expectation, right? If I'm saying that book/1, then in the code it will come here, right? I'm saying I'm accessing this API. In the ID it is 1. So is there a book with ID 1? There is. That is what we just saw, and I'm trying to return that book. Which book is it? It is this one, right? But I'm telling you that this won't work. Let's quickly try. It did not work. It did not work. Basically, it is returning you null, which is what Saloni was saying a minute ago. It is returning you null. Can you take a quick minute to guess why it is returning you null? Take a quick guess. नहीं यार, question mark ID equal to 1 की क्या जरूरत है? That is just parameters. That's something else. Colon data type. Varun is right. Data type. The data type of this ID is a number. All right. And when you're passing stuff from here, no. Hold on a second. I think I opened something. Hold on a second. Yeah. When you're passing stuff from here, everything is a string. I can prove it to you. Just give me a second. Or rather, let me not prove it and save some time and fix it. So basically, this is a string. What is there in this ID? Double quotes 1, which is obviously not in any ID. You need a string, or rather I need a number, because in here it's a number. So I can hard code it to a string. That is one thing I can do. Or I can not touch the data and fix my code. So I'm saying whatever string I am getting, please typecast it into a number. Is that okay? So I was getting double quotes 1, and after this typecasting, it would become 1. Now it should be able to find it in the list of books. Is that okay? Mhm. All right. Let me stop the application and restart it. Okay. And assuming that everything works, now let me again try to do this. And if you notice, you got the response. And this is the correct response. Let's compare it. This is exactly the book with ID 1. Does this make sense? Sir, but how can we connect this API in our main project? What do you mean main project? This is the main project. No. Define what is main project, Bhumika. Just write it in the chat, or maybe we can talk about it later. Like we have some front end. So I'm not teaching you front end. Now from front end, you can request APIs, like call APIs. So backend will give data back to the front end code which called this API, and then there you can write code to manipulate that JSON. Meaning of params. Params is just something that is there in the request. It's just a field in the request, and when you are doing something like this, you are technically saying that in the params the value should be 1. You can use node more, but I don't want to get into it. Okay. Hopefully this is clear. So we just created two APIs, one to get all the books and one to get book based on a specific ID. Does this make sense, guys? Does this make sense? चलो थोड़ा heavy करते हैं अब. Let's try to create a post. Let's try to create a book. Create a book. So basically, I have a list of books: B1, B2, B3, la 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 la, BN. Is that okay? And I want to add a new book into the file that I have, because the file is the actual source of data, right? If you think about it, ये जो books वाला JavaScript object है, this is just reading that file into this object so that I can return this value. But ideally, if I have a book object, it is not sufficient to put it in this array or JavaScript array. Ultimately, I should be able to see it in my actual data, right? So that in the future, when I'm again reading the file, the new book that I added in the past is visible. Would you agree with that? Right? So the goal here is to create a book in the file. What kind of an API is this? What kind of an API is this based on the API specifications that I just told you before? I think we are trying to create something. So this should be a post kind of an API. Yes? I think this should be a post API. Let's try to create it. And this would also involve file handling, because I want to write something back to the file. Would you agree with that? Would you agree with that? Chalo, let's try to do this. We have 15 minutes, so should be fine. Chalo. So I'm trying to create a book into, or rather, it's actually create slash add a book into the file, or I can say mock data. Is that okay? You want to help me? How do I do this? First, I have to decide. I have to say app dot post, because this is a post kind of an API. Yes, is that right? Is that right? Just say something, guys. Worry about the certificate. You will get the certificate, guys. This is not the first time we have done this. Don't worry about the certificate. Don't worry about the recording. Just focus on what I'm saying. App dot post. Okay, what did I say? It would take first the path on which this post API is present, followed by what method would be invoked when someone calls this post API. Yes, is that okay? Is that okay? So for now, let me keep it simple. I want to say you don't have to write add books in the path, first of all, because the post name is enough to say, okay, something is being created. So if I'm saying book, it means that, okay, someone is trying to create a book. You don't have to write add book in the page URL as well. That is just wrong practice. All right. So if someone tries to do a post request on this book path, then I want a certain method to be invoked. And what would this method have in the parameters? As usual, request response. Is that okay? Is that okay? Any questions up till this point? I don't think so. Right? Okay. Just like a request has params, a request also has a body. And I want to, if I'm sending a book, I'll be sending it in JSON format. Would you agree with this? Varun, it has to be a callback, I'm afraid. Okay. I'll basically, I have books, right? Like this. Let me just copy one of these. I want to send a book like this. So let me just copy paste it. Okay, let me just change some values. So ideally, the next ID should be something more, something else rather. कुछ भी ले लो अभी के लिए 19. Author first name घोष. ठीक है. Email ID doesn't matter. Obviously, I'm a male. Book title is Kite Runner. Why not? ठीक है. This is the book that I want to add to the list of books. अच्छा, you're saying कि slash नहीं लगाया, लगा दो यार. It's not that big of a deal. दो. ठीक है. I want to let's say add this book. Is that okay? इसी से टेस्टिंग भी हो जाएगी पोस्ट एपीआई की. Would you agree? I want to add this book to the file. Is that okay? So usually when we are sending JSONs in the request, we send it in the body of the request. Is that okay? Let me try to write some code and again, then I'll explain. So I would extract the const. Let me just create a variable. Book is equal to request dot body. Oh, okay. We'll face an error here. So I've extracted the book. Is that okay? Ideally, we never expect someone to send us any ID. All right. Because IDs are unique and you cannot depend on a client to tell you what IDs you should have. So whatever ID is sending you, screw it. I'll decide what the ID would be. The ID should be what is the length of my list. I can basically, if I have 5 books, then the new book which comes should be of ID 6, right? So I can do length plus 1 to figure out the ID. Yeah. So book dot ID is equal to uh, I think I have the books right. Books dot length plus 1. Is that okay? Sriram has written books dot length equal to 1. Length equal क्यों करनी है? I think you meant the same thing only. ठीक है? So I figured out the ID. ठीक है. Now what do I want to do? I want to push this book into this books array. So how do I do that? Books dot बताओ क्या use करूँ? I think the command is push only. So push. Wait, what happened? Push what? In the books array, I want to push the book that I have just sent to the request. Is that okay? Okay. Now, the book that I sent through the request would be there in the books array, which is a JavaScript object, and it has not gone into the file. What I want is I have the file, clean the file, and rewrite it using the modified books array. Does that make sense? It should be slash books. Again, chalo theek hai. I can make it slash books, but I know the question is about to come because you are only inserting one book. Then why are you doing slash books? But I agree, it should be slash books. Anyway, it's just a name, doesn't matter. What I'm trying to say is you have a book which you extracted from the request. What do you mean remaining info? Remaining info will be as it is, no? अरे क्या समझ नहीं आ रहा. This is what the user would be sending me. Obviously, the code can't predict what's the author's first name, last name, la la la. What the code should be able to do is generate an ID. You cannot depend on the ID that the user is sending you because IDs should ideally be unique. So whatever I'm getting in the request, the only thing I'm changing is the ID of the book. Rest everything should remain the same. Is that okay? Swarnima, I hope that's fine. Okay. I pushed the book that I figured out into the books array. And now what do I want to do? I want to clean the file that I have and rewrite it with the new modified books array, which has the new book that the user sent me. Is that okay? Is that okay? ठीक है. यहाँ पर थोड़ा file system का खेल होगा. I have already written this code because again, I cannot extend this any further. Okay, maybe I can write it for you. So first I need to require something. So just like we have Express and all that, in Node.js, there is a built-in file system, right? It is known as the file system module or FS module. So what you can do is const, let me just take any name, is equal to require FS. Is that okay? FS stands for file system. Is that cool? And I should be able to manipulate this file using this file. Guys, my headphones battery is getting a bit low. Am I still audible? Am I audible? Okay, great. Cool. I can use this fs to write something back into the file. Okay. So let's try to use this. So I have this and I want to write into the file with this particular data, right? All I need to do is fs dot write file sync. No, I don't want to do it asynchronously. Or rather, I want to do it asynchronously. And I want to write into the file. What do I want to write? This modified books array, right? Would you agree with that? Would you agree with that? So the first parameter is where do you want to write? The second parameter is what do you want to write? And the third parameter is what happens if there is an error. If you are able to do these three things, you should be fine. Okay. So where do I want to write? I think I want to write in this location. Yes, I want to write in this location. Would you agree? Okay. What do I want to write? I want to write this books. But file में तो strings ही append होंगी. So I might have to do stringify or yeah. So let's just say JSON dot stringify and let me pass in the books. Don't worry about it if you don't know it. Just assume that in this file you want to put this data. Is that okay? Is that okay? All right. And the last thing is actually a callback method, which says what happens if there is an error. So it could be while writing in a file, there would be some errors like what if the file does not exist? There is no path, la la la. So this accepts an error. So if there is no error, this error thing is null. Where is the body of the new book? Array, that is something that the user will pass. No code को कैसे पता होगा कि what should be the author first name last name? That is coming from the user, no, in the request. Would you agree with that, Ishika? You wouldn't know about the body. I mean, you have the body, but I'm not doing anything with it. That is something that the user will pass. The only thing that I'm doing is updating the ID because I cannot depend on the user's ID's value. उसे क्या पता what should be the unique ID? I'm only manipulating that. Rest everything is exactly what the body is. In reality, the whole data is rewritten in file along with the new data, or just it's appended in the previous data. In reality, we use databases, so it is appended. Right now, I cannot append it inside the JSON or the array, so that's why I'm doing it like this. Anyway, let's try to finish this, guys. So what I'm saying is, while writing in a file, if you don't have any errors, then the error is none. That's a good case. If there are any errors, you should handle it. So two things can happen. If there is an error, then something might happen. All right. And if there is no error, then I should do what? Return. Tell me. I should return response dot JSON, and I can maybe write something nice here. So I can create my own object which says status is equal to uh, I don't know inserted maybe, and I can maybe also write the name of the book if that makes any sense. Yeah, I think this is fine. Okay, chalo, at least let's try to test this. Eventually, so there would be no errors, or maybe I can write the error code here only. If there is an error, what should happen? What should happen? I can, for now, for my debugging purposes, first console log that error, uh, and I can return a response back to the user that okay, you have screwed up something. So mm, mm, return. What should I return? Okay, for now, let's just go for a normal return string. Response dot JSON error bro sad emoji. Okay. So what happens? I got the book from the request. I manually edited the ID of that book. All right. No, no. Why would you say error 404 book not found? You're not finding a book. What kind of an error is that? No, wrong. Now, after you have manipulated the ID of the book, I am putting it in the books array. All right. And then I'm saying I would rewrite this JSON with this particular books data. If there is any error, I will see it like this. If there are no errors, then this would be returned like result.json status inserted. And in the backend or in the file, I will be able to see the new book. Does that make any sense? Does that make any sense, guys? First of all, this won't work. This won't work. I'll tell you why this won't work. I think it involves the concept of middlewares, which I have not taught you, and I can only do so much. The only thing that you need to do is, what did you need to do? Just a second, guys. I think I just need to write one more code here, which is this. So just this is extra. This is used when we pass something in the body of the request. This would be used. This is just a middleware. I'm sorry I did not explain this, but I don't have the time. When would this class end, sir? Just give me 2 minutes. I'll just demo this and I'll end the class. Don't worry about it. Just give me 2 more minutes. All right. So basically, books. Yeah. So I'm sending some data about the book in the request. All right. I'm extracting that data into this book variable. I am manually changing the ID of the book because I cannot depend on what the user is sending me. I'm pushing it into the books array, and then I am writing the books array information into this file again. Is the high level overview of this API clear to you? Okay. Now, there is a catch here. The catch is browsers है ना, you can only call get request. That is the catch. And what kind of a request do we have right now? I think it's a post request. Yes. Would you agree with this? Browser में ना, it's a known fact that you can only do get request, and this is a post kind of a request. So there is a API testing tool using which you can call any type of API. I think it is known as Postman. So let me just use this. This might be a bit too much for you. Okay, let's see. So localhost 8080 uh, books. So this tool allows you to call all types of APIs. Using browser, you can only do get APIs. All right. So localhost 8080 books. This is my API path, right? This is my API path. All right. And I am expecting something in the body of the request. So let me put something in the body of the request. So in the body, I am, wait, hold on a second. In the body, let me put my JSON that I wanted to send. Let me send this, that I want to send this particular book. Is that okay? Is that okay? Is that okay? Let's see what happens. Let me do a send. Okay, error out cannot post slash books. Why not? Okay, because I did not restart the server. Okay, let me just close this and let me restart the server. Okay, let's see. And it says inserted. And if it is inserted, that means in the new file or the file that I have, I should be able to see this author Mena Ghosh la la la. So let me quickly check that. Okay, this is not formatted, it seems. But can you see this? It was inserted here. Also notice the fact the ID is 13 because the original size of the list was 12. All right. Even though I passed a illogical ID, my code was able to handle it and put the correct ID. Does that make sense? Middleware part दिखाना please. ये लो दिखा देता हूँ. I know I have not explained middleware, guys. It's a huge topic in itself and I had to cover a lot. But this is the only thing that you needed to do. Otherwise, it is not able to extract the data from the body of the record. ठीक है? चलो, I think this is a good ending point. How can we do this in VS Code other than Postman? I think there is something known as Thunder Client, which does the exact same thing, but you would need Postman. Postman is a API testing tool which allows you to hit all types of APIs. In from the browser URL, you can only send get APIs. We need to restart again and again in NPM. We, in general, we do need to restart again and again, but there is something known as NodeMon, using which you don't need to restart it. But I didn't want to get into it. Sir, please do share GitHub repo link. That's a fantastic idea. I'll do it right now. Just hold on a second. Hold on a second. Let me just create a GitHub repository and let me share it with you. And by evening, I'll upload everything there. Just hold on a second, guys. Let me create a GitHub account. Blah, blah, blah. Create. Let's call it Node.Js Masterclass 1. Why not? Create repository. Okay. I'm sharing this link in the chat. All right. By evening, I'll upload everything that I have done into this GitHub repository and you can see it from there. Ishika is asking a good question. If we hit the post request again, then will it add another book with same details? Yes, it will. Because right now I don't have any code to do validation whether this book exists or not. So I'm afraid it will do that. Let's quickly test it out. We can test it out. Again, again it is saying inserted. Let me see. Mock data. Let me format this document. And you can see now it comes with ID 14 and there are two books. Because in my code, there is no validation to check whether some books already exist or not. So yeah, it would cause repetition. Sir, where can I see the recording session? It would be provided to you. The Geekster team will reach out to you, so it should be fine. Wonderful and helpful masterclass of Node.js. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. Okay, bro. Wait, hold on a second. Matlab, let me endorse myself and Geekster for a while. So again, Geekster helps you to do what I did. like on a daily basis. And if you want to connect with me, I can share my LinkedIn ID. Just hold on a second. Okay, now it is taking a lot of time. Interesting. Oh, okay, it's not opening. Let's see. Does it open somewhere else? Or can we access the recording? Why is it not working? Let me try to use a different browser. To LinkedIn. Uh, s- it was an amazing session, sir. I'm so new to coding world and I get the idea about some new things. Okay, my LinkedIn is not opening. Interesting. Continue with Google. Maybe it opens on a different browser. Okay. So yeah, you can follow me here. And if you have any doubts, maybe we can discuss it here. I know I didn't take a lot of doubts because I had to like start from the very scratch and go till the backend development part. But yeah, sir, any attendance link, I'm not aware about it, but the panelist team can reach out if they want to take attendance. But after this, you should be able to at least create APIs. I know I did not do the database connectivity part because that takes a while, and you obviously don't know MongoDB if you don't know JS. But anyway, it's fine. You can write it to a file as well. It's just a data source. Okay. The certificate and the recording will be provided later. How can we learn Node.js from scratch in which you are teaching as you are doing? Oh, you can join Geekster. Thanks, Ganesh. Repo link. I shared the repo link, no? Did you not get it? This is the repo link. By evening, I'll upload everything that I have to upload on this repo. I again send it and you can access it from there. Evening tak I'll do it. Yeah, after a while, I'll see LinkedIn as well. But that should be it. Repo is empty. Arey, obviously, the repo is empty because I've not put anything there. No, that's what I'm saying. Like after this class till evening, I'll put everything there, and around night you can check again, and you'll see everything. Can we leave? Of course you can. But the repo is empty. I know. I'll upload stuff there. Sir, where did you share this? Share what? I don't get it. Share what? Hardik? Sorry, Harshil. GitHub. In the chat, no. Like again, I'm doing it in the chat. So since the ID is changed, how will the user get its data back using, wait, that's a good question. Data back using get API. Obviously, that is very correct. So what, think about it. If the ID is changed, first of all, he should not be bothered about IDs. You never give your IDs when you're creating your accounts. But what he can do is he can do a get all books. So he'll be able to see all the books and then he can figure out the ID of his particular book. No? Does that make any sense? LinkedIn account. Here, here, sir. This is the one. Who asked the question? I think you got your answer out. You have the get all APIs. Ideally, get by ID does not make a lot of sense because what does the user care about the ID? It should be get by name. I did not do get by name because I wanted to save some time. But instead of the ID, you can pass in some name, search on that name because a user would know the name of the book, right? And then you can return that book. Yeah. All right then. Let's wrap this up. Hopefully, I'll see you again sometime. Tata, bye bye. Have a great weekend. Bye, guys. We have to write a API to send response. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Bye, guys. Bye.